Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel, and today I'll be going over my October reading wrap-up. This was a big month for me. I read 12 books and I think 5 comic collections and graphic novels. So a lot to talk about. I don't want to spend too much time on the intro. I'll just say that my goal of 100 books in the year is well within my sights, and I think that's why I read so much this month, is because I could see it. I could see that finish line, and I'm very eager to cross it, and I almost certainly will, barring catastrophe. So let's get into what I read. I'll start with the stuff that I don't have a physical copy of. All right, we'll start with a comic book. Dracula by James Tynion IV and Martin Simmonds. Technically, I think the title for this is Universal Monsters Dracula. Image Comics and its Skybound imprint have begun doing comics that are based on the original Universal Monster movies, but like updated a little bit. Not like updated for modern times, just like different takes on them. So the Dracula one is the first one that they published. They also did a Creature from the Black Lagoon, which I still have to read. I read the first issue and I liked it a lot. And they currently have a Frankenstein one that I'm really enjoying. Dracula, I love the creative team for this. James Tynion IV and Martin Simmonds, they also do the Department of Truth together. And that comic series is one of my favorites going right now. I really love that one. I love Martin Simmonds' artwork. He's a painter, so his pages are completely painted with some mixed media. You'll see like he'll use lace that he's pasting onto the board for like dresses. But it just looks beautiful. It's a really beautiful looking comic. The story, I think, this one didn't quite satisfy me as much as I wanted it to. It was good, but there was just something I felt like that was missing a little bit. It focuses primarily, I would say, on Renfield in the asylum. It picks up, he's already in there. Dracula has already made his way to overseas, and it's just kind of like it sort of retells the movie from there, but it goes a little bit more into Renfield and his arc more than anything else. Dracula is very much in the background. He mostly just shows up and you see like his eyes from a distance, which kind of fits in with the original movie. After that initial opening, Bela Lugosi's Dracula is mostly just like a presence that lingers and shows up once in a while. At least that's how I remember it. And so it works pretty well. The art works really great. There's just something a little bit missing about it. I don't know. That's all I can say. Another comic that's very different, Bone, Volume 2, The Great Cow Race by Jeff Smith. I'm just making my way slowly through the Bone comics. It's just a series that I've always wanted to read. It's a really fun fantasy series that's good for all ages. I don't have too much else to say about this one. I think Bone's a lot of fun. Jeff Smith is a great cartoonist, and I recommend it no matter what age you are. I think it actually even works if you've never read a comic before. I think it is a really great entryway because it's very simple in the way that the storytelling is done, but it is not like kiddie. It's not childish. There's some spooky bits in there, honestly. Which is good, because I tried to read mostly spooky stuff this month. This one was kind of an aberration. But yeah, great. Love Bone. Switching over to novels. The Haunting of Rookward House by Darcy Coates. I liked this one. Did I? What was this one about? Oh, okay, yeah. This one was a guy who is down on his luck. Like, he had to move back in with his mother after like he did something kind of bad, not really deliberately. He just kind of had an accident, and now he's a little bit of a pariah, but he finds out that he's got this old decrepit house that belongs to his mom. She forgot about it for years, and he decides to go fix it up to sell it to fix their money woes. And of course, the house is haunted. It always is. I like Darcy Coates. Her books are really good for if you want solid, spooky atmosphere, but kind of a cozy environment. Nothing that's really going to terrify you for the most part. Nothing too graphic or over the top. There is violence, there is blood, but it's I don't know. It's like it's very ingestible. That's how I describe her horror, and it's often forgettable for that reason. So it's not for everybody. This is one that I think was solid, but not great. I've read much better from her, but good and better than Craven Manor, which I read a month ago or a couple months ago. I read a nonfiction book this month. Do you believe it? I read a nonfiction book. Wow, only my second of the year, probably my last. Scared Sacred by a various contributors. This was a collection of essays about horror movies, examining idolatry and religion in classic horror movies. And it was very interesting. There were definitely some chapters that I skimmed through because I simply just hadn't seen the movie yet. I'm sure that the scholarship was all there and that it was all correct and well thought out. I just didn't, when you're not familiar with the source material, it can be hard to relate in that way. But I really enjoyed the essay on Hellraiser. And I'm not even really, I actually don't like the Hellraiser, the movies. I've only seen the first one. I've only seen it once. I didn't really care for it. But the essay that was written here interested me enough where I would like to revisit that first Hellraiser and its sequel. It did a good job of providing a little bit more depth to material that I previously saw as very shallow. So that's a great thing. There was another really good chapter about the Conjuring movies and how they are Catholic propaganda, which I totally get it and I totally see. It's a very interesting book that covers a lot of different topics. There was a good one on Japanese folk horror with the movie Onibaba, which is great. I actually watched the movie Onibaba specifically to prepare for that chapter, and it was worth it. It was a great movie, and it was a really good chapter. I liked it a lot. So yeah, if you could find this book, you might have to settle for the ebook because I think there's only like 100 physical copies that exist. It's good. It's a solid read. If you like horror movies and you like scholarship and critical thinking about it, I think you'd dig it. All right, next is a book that I did not really dig. One of the only books I read this month that I wasn't a huge fan of, and that's Gone to See the Riverman by Kristopher Triana. This book was a bit of a booktube darling about a year or so ago. A lot of the horror booktubers in general read it. It was one of those things that I kind of saw everywhere. And I finally got around to reading it. It is an extreme horror novel, which I think I'm learning that I'm just not a huge fan, or even a small fan, of extreme horror. And this wasn't even that extreme. It was gross. There was there's content in here that is, it's bad. You wouldn't see it in a regular horror novel usually, but it's like it was an easier read, and it's a well written book too, which I wanted to specify that I think Kristopher Triana is talented. I think that there is something here, and I kind of see why a lot of people might like this book. I did not. The main issue for me was that the main character was so very unlikable. And I think that's kind of a trend with extreme horror, at least the books that I've read, where there is nobody in it that is redeemable. And the main character, you can have a main character that does bad things, but is still kind of fun to read, they're fun to spend time with. They're fun to watch do bad things. This main character was not fun to watch at all. Quick rundown of what the book is. I forget what the main character's name is, but she is obsessed with a serial killer who's in prison. She's like a pen pal with him. He gives her a task to complete for him to find something in this cabin that the police didn't know about and deliver this package to somebody called the Riverman. And in the process of doing so, her inner psyche gets revealed. Her past is revealed to us, and how she's done some terrible things. It's an interesting concept. Again, it's just I just don't think that this is for me. This particular subgenre. So I think if you wanted to dip your toes into extreme horror, this is probably a good way to do it, and it will tell you whether or not it's for you or not. It's not for me. All right, the last book I don't have a physical copy of is A Night in the Lonesome October by Roger Zelazny. I did post a full review of this one, so I won't spend too much time on explaining the plot. I will tell you that I liked it a lot, and there is a physical copy that comes out, I think, early next year that I might try to get a copy of, and I might do a rebind of it to turn it into one of my nice hardcovers. Because it was fun. It was a very charming book that has really great autumn October feels. Check out my full review for what I mean by that. All right, let's move into the physical stuff. Speaking of great October feels, this is the book I read most recently. That's Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. This is a reread. I think this is the third time I've read this book. It is one of my favorites of all time. So not a surprise that I enjoyed it again here. I think this is a really beautiful book that every time I revisit it, I find something kind of else that connects with me and that makes me feel emotional. I think it's just a wonderful story that is told in a way that is borderline poetic by Ray Bradbury. I don't usually like flowery purple prose, but this book just sings to me. It's really lovely. The actual story of Something Wicked isn't the strongest in my opinion. I think it is a backdrop to what Bradbury really wants to talk about, which is coming of age, being of age, things like that. I find myself really gravitating towards stories like that, which is kind of funny because there's another book that I read this month that deals with a similar theme, but in a very different way, and that's X by Tim Waggoner. This is a novelization of the movie by Ty West that also deals with aging. I also have a full review of this book up. Spoiler alert, I loved it. I loved this book. I was so surprised by how good this novelization was. I also love the movie, and with a lot of novelizations, you can kind of tell usually if you'll like the novelization if you enjoy the movie, because if the writer's doing their job, they're just going to capture everything that works in the movie and then put it in written form. So I like the story. I like the theme. Check out my full review for why I love this so much. Very impressed by A24 for releasing this. They're going to do the same thing for Pearl and Maxine. It's a great idea. It is such a great idea for a movie studio to publish their own novelizations. Fantastic idea. Just do it. If people love the movies you make, keep it alive. Keep pushing it. We don't want a Funko Pop of the X characters. I don't need a Funko Pop of Maxine Minx. I want interesting, cool stuff like this. Give me that. Give me more of that. And switch back to comics really quickly. I read a couple Richard Sala books this month, both in the same series. I read Peculia and the Groon Grove Vampires. I talked a little bit about Richard Sala in my previous monthly wrap-up. His artwork is such a delight. I personally really like it, and if you like what you see here, I think the big draw of his comics is his unique style, which I compare to the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari meets Charles Addams of the Addams Family. So if that sounds interesting to you, he does a lot of monster stories. The Peculia stories are about this peculiar girl named Peculia who they're basically vignettes where she just kind of walks around her strange town, usually barefoot, and finds herself face to face with some kind of menace, like a vampire, like cultists, strange feral children, and we just watch how she's able to get out of those situations. Fun, simple stories. The art is really the selling point. I read another Ray Bradbury book at the beginning of this month. I Sing the Body Electric. This is a short story collection. And like most short story collections, there are some stories that are better than others. I will say that for the most part, the majority of these stories are hits. I enjoyed them quite a bit. I'm trying to remember the name of ones that I particularly enjoyed, but it's been 30 days, so I've already like forgotten what story correlates to what title. Oh, the man in the Rorschach shirt. That was a really nice one. Oh, and I really liked the terrible conflagration up at the place. That was an interesting one about these. I think it was set in Ireland, like during like the revolution times that they had there, like the modern revolution, not like ancient revolution. And a bunch of like townsfolk go to burn a mansion to the ground of like an upper class guy, and they end up just like kind of talking to him, and he convinces them like, you know, you could burn my house down, but I have a lot of really great art in here, like valuable one of a kind art, um, and it would be a shame to lose that forever. And they're all just like, yeah, that's true. And so he just lets them take it out into to bring it home with them, but they all end up coming back to the mansion with the art that they took, and they all have a reason why they couldn't keep it. Like either their wife wouldn't let them, or like it was just too heavy to carry, and so they end up just like putting it all back, and then they just kind of like it just kind of like they could go home and change their mind. It's I don't know. It's a fun story. There's a lot of that stuff like that in there, so I enjoyed that one a lot. I didn't read all scary stuff this month. I did manage to fit in an 87th Precinct. This is Long Time No See by Ed McBain. This was a very good one. This is a strong entry in the series, in my opinion, in which a bunch of blind people are being murdered. And it's up to Detective Steve Carella to figure out what the connection is. Is there a connection, and why? A lot of interesting twists and turns in this one. A solid mystery. I love Ed McBain's investigative writing. And in general, just his atmosphere. He's so good at writing about this city of Isola that he's made up. Every now and then he'll be in the middle of this police investigation, and then he'll just drop a couple pages of just beautiful prose about like the nature of the life of a city. Like he's a really special writer, like really good. I'm really so happy I found his writing. Something back into spooky territory, Coraline by Neil Gaiman. This was I picked this up specifically. This was a reread, and I had this weird time this month where I had to leave town. I had to go on the lam. No, I had to leave town like for a wedding, and I had one day before there where I was in between books. So I had finished a book 2 days before, and I didn't want to bring a physical book with me. So I said, let me just try to pick up something short and read it in one day. So I read Coraline in one day before I had to leave for this wedding. It's really nice. It's a good book. I love most of Neil Gaiman's writing. This is, I think, good. I don't like it as much as the movie. I think the movie expands on the book in ways that just kind of fleshes it out a bit, improves it. I also think it's very hard to read Coraline now with the movie in existence, because I can't read this without thinking of like the stop motion animation. You know, it's kind of interesting to think that when this was written, these characters were just meant to be visualized as regular human beings, which kind of makes it a little bit spooky, because like the people with the button eyes, you know, that's terrifying, like a human being like that. But now I read it and I just see the movie in my head. It's very hard to get around that. So that's, you know, a good thing for the movie, maybe a bad thing for the book. I don't know, but still pretty good. All right. This was maybe the worst book I read this month. I don't know if I liked it more or less than Gone to See the Riverman, but it's another reread, Crossroads of Twilight by Robert Jordan. Not spooky, but it is just part of the Wheel of Time, and I'm doing that reread now. This is the worst book in the series by far. It is 600 pages of pretty much nothing happening. The last 100 pages or so, you do get a little bit of something happening. Like Perrin's story wraps up in a really cool way, and we do get some progression with Egwene's story. I'll just say that if you're doing your own Wheel of Time reading, just like you can honestly either skip this book or at least just skip to page 500 and just finish it from there. There's so much in here that you do not need to really read. Just check the Wheel of Time wiki, and you'll get all the same information, the same experience. This is a gift from my partner. It is Nightmare Hour by R.L. Stine. This is one of the earliest horror collections I remember reading. Really, the earliest one I remember reading. I read Goosebumps as a child, and this was like a step up from Goosebumps, just barely. It's kind of, it's still kind of a middle school book. But there was one particular story in here that always stuck with me, which is I'm Not Martin. And I hadn't read it in a really long time. So I read this whole thing, again, really short, read it in like a day or two. It was really fun to revisit this. I do see now, being older, the pitfalls and the shortcomings of R.L. Stine's writing, but then again, he's writing for children, and I'm not that anymore. But still really fun stories. I also completely forgot that there's illustrations in here for each story, and lo and behold, I was very surprised to find, where is it? That one of my favorites, Bernie Wrightson, has an illustration in here. And I love when life does that, where I see that something that I loved as a child and something that I love as an adult find a connection between the two that I didn't know consciously existed. And it's like, it feels like there's just like that thread where it's like, this may have like laid the seed that I would love Bernie Wrightson before I even know to check for art credits, on a piece of art. I just think that's really neat. We're getting to the end finally. So the last novel that I read this month was Slewfoot by Brom, Gerald Brom. And I enjoyed this very much. This is a folk horror novel. This is the story of a young woman who is living in a Puritan town in, I think, 1666, late mid 1600s in the U.S. In an early settlement. She was basically sold into marriage by her deadbeat father from overseas. She is married to a bit of a loner guy who does treat her well. He's a nice guy, and they get along. But he is really underneath the thumb of his overbearing brother, who is a loudmouth and very much into the puritanical ways of suppressing women. And what ends up happening is that Abatha owes a great debt to the brother, and she just has to find a way to make up that debt while also, avoiding just being in this extremely religious puritanical village. And also there's something in the woods that's kind of spooky, it is really good. It's very good. It reminds me, if you enjoyed the movie The Witch by Robert Eggers, is it Robert Eggers? Then you would probably enjoy this quite a bit. I also love Brom's illustrations. Brom is an artist as well, so the cover is by him. There's illustrations in the book of the characters. The only thing that I would say is I would say about redoing this, all the illustrations are in the center of the book, and some of them contain spoilers for characters and things that we don't see until the end of the book. So I would just redistribute these illustrations where more relevant. That's my only criticism of this packaging. Also, it's a square. It's weird. But I really love this book. I love Abatha. I think I'm in love with Abatha. I actually printed out. I made a print of this cover that I plan on framing and hanging on my wall because I just think she's just wonderful. Cloven feet and all. So yeah, I really love Slewfoot. If you like folk horror, I think that's a book for you. And finally, the last comic collection that I read is Accidents and Old Lace. These are EC stories that are illustrated by Ghastly Graham Ingels. This is, I've read a couple volumes of this in previous months that you may have seen. These are Fantagraphics collections of EC Comics stories from the Vault of Horror, Tales from the Crypt, all those titles in black and white, but broken up by specific artists. So rather than collecting the issues, it's just picking out the specific artists from there and creating a compendium of their specific work. I love Graham Ingels' artwork. He was an inspiration for Bernie Wrightson, talked about before, as well as a lot of other great artists. This is not the best work in terms of the stories. The previous collections were a little bit stronger. This is the tail end of the EC Comics life cycle, pushing towards when the Comics Code Authority was coming into play. Al Feldstein and William Gaines kind of took a back seat in terms of writing. They handed off writing duties for a lot of the stories, and the writing suffers because of that. But Graham Ingels' artwork remains solid throughout. He still is, fantastic, and we get to see, the last stories that he published for EC and see how it differed once the Comics Code came in. Just creates, it's interesting package. I love these collections. I bought a few more recently. I got the Jack Davis one, and did I get the other Graham Ingels one? I've already forgotten what I got. Maybe I got another Harvey Kurtzman one. I don't remember. But anyway, oh no, I got the Al Williamson one. That one I'm really looking forward to reading. So yeah, those are all of the books, comics, graphic novels that I read in October. Like I said, big month. I am up to 88 books read, which means only 12 left to get to 100. And if I read 12 books this month, then I can definitely easily do that. So I'm really excited. Let me know how your October went in terms of reading. Let me know if you read any of the books that I talked about today and your thoughts on them. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.